Funky fantasy. The bowl. Stratoceros. There's the War of Nerds. Ooh. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the War of Nerds podcast. I had to clear my throat there, so don't mind that. It's just pure excitement. I'm the funky fantasy man, Nathan Helm.
I'm Alfred Muller.
And I'm Ryan Morgan, also known as Stratoceros.
And together, we are the bearded nerds. Our beards so luscious, so beautiful, magically enchanted beards. Be jealous. And did you know that our beards each gain us with 10% dexterity and 10% constitution, and 10% strength, and 10% willpower, and 10% character creation stats in the beginning? If you understood the joke. Today's episode is D&D. And as I know y'all can come yell at me later. I haven't played D&D before. I know a lot about D&D, but I've just never gotten the opportunity to play it, and that's mostly just due to my career and all that stuff. So, I may not have as much to add to this episode, but Alfred and Ryan will be asking questions and be talking about the stuff that we do know, maybe books and movies that pertain to D&D and different things like that. So with that being started, I do have one question for you guys. Have you read The Legend of Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore?
I have not.
I have read the first 3 books, Homeward Exile and or Homeward something in Exile. So I've only read 3 of the books, but I've heard that they get better. So I'm gonna try and read more of them, but I've struggled to get through those 3.
I struggled to get through the first 3 hours of the first book. I don't know. I don't see what the whole hubbub's about with Drizzt. I know some people enjoy it. I'm more of the first Law trilogy, The Blade itself, Joe Abercrombie, or kind of like, I just like older school feeling books and the way that they're written. So the Dresden Files, things like that.
Dragonlance is an amazing adaptation of D&D.
That was where I got started with my reading very early on. Like, again, I didn't read very much when I was a kid, but I had the Dragonlance Chronicles series, the autumn, winter, and summer, I think, or spring.
Summer. Yep.
Yeah. So I had those 3, and I really enjoyed the characters in it. And the fact that they literally took their characters from campaigns they had been in and playing, and then created the world and the events that happen and put their characters through that, and then to make such memorable characters too, because you still have Rasslin and I'm gonna blank on his big buff brother's name, but the 2 brothers dynamic of one being strong and one being weak but intelligent and magical. It starts with a K.
Carradine?
Yeah, it's something along those lines. But like that contrast between the 2 brothers has carried on through so much other literature that people have kind of played off of, and it's still incredible storylines that they've taken from that, and all that goes back to D&D, and just D&D has been able to spark creativity with so many people, and I think that's kind of the beauty behind it. Even if you don't play it, if you just read some of the books, even if you read the movies or watch the movies, not all of that is connected directly, and some of it is, but then you'll see people who have written a book that has nothing to do with the D&D world, but they will take orcs, for example, and they will describe them exactly how they are in Dungeons and Dragons, because that's become the standard for a lot of things, and then you get to take that in whatever direction you want.
And I do have a side note, Nathan. I am absolutely going to create a magical beard now. That if you come across it, it's going to be like Vecna's beard, and it's going to attach to your face and give you all those benefits.
Excellent.
You're too late. I already created that beard, homie. But it's.
I'm going to steal it and use it in one of my games.
I'm kidding. No, that's actually an awesome idea. You're walking along a D&D campaign, and there's like, you're walking down to the blah 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 region, and you stop upon a stable barn. It's uninhabited. You walk inside and you find 3 unknown artifacts. Which one do you choose? 1, a magical beard. 2, a magical scythe. Or 3, a magical book. I'm taking the magical beard all day because that makes me Gandalf. And then it's just
A
saying.
long, glorious white beard flowing down to your feet.
Congratulations, you've ranked up to level 2. Congratulations, your beard now gives you 10% extra dexterity. Congratulations, you rank up to level 4. When you now fight against goblin raiders, you will have an easier time beating them with magical artifacts, and your aura will be enhanced by 10% in combat abilities for 1 hour. Congratulations, you rank up to level 5. Had to throw some LitRPG stuff in there just to the
But
trope of LitRPG.
I think what makes that scenario even funnier, and to kind of tie it back to D&D, is say your character doesn't have detect magic, and you walk into that same barn, you see those 3 items, and you don't know any of them are magic, and you still choose to pick up the beard and put
Yeah.
that on and leave the other 2 objects just to be getting all those abilities in turn. That's what makes playing Dungeons and Dragons so fun, is sometimes your choices can be the stupidest or silliest things and have the best outcome.
It's a testament to an amazing DM that can take scenarios and create things like that. Like I was thinking that would be awesome for like a rogue. Let's say your character's like, yeah, your player's like, I want to go and find some type of disguise so I don't get caught by the town guard. And you're like, okay, you run into a broom closet and you see a handful of items. You see a broom, you see a bucket, you see a beard, you see. Wait, hold on, what was that beard thing? Oh yeah, you see a patch of hair laying on a table. I grab that. Okay.
Don't you want to learn like a shout, man? Or don't you want to join the Stormcloaks or the Imperials? No, I want to get the beard. The beard is what I want. I don't care about Stormcloaks. I just want the beard. Like, well, what if this said beard? You didn't know it was magic, but you walked up to it and you're like, beard, artifact, random. Once you put beard on, you will not be able to remove.
It's like the mask.
Beard keeps you 10% warmer during the winter time, but you get 10% warmer during the summertime. Your ability to destroy enemies can be stopped if your beard gets entangled in their weapon.
I got a question for you, Ryan. What was the
Sure.
first edition you started with?
Okay, so I'm kind of glad you asked, because I was wanting to touch on this. A friend of mine had some really old sets of books. So I started playing when I was like 7th, 8th grade. So this is, oh God, I'm gonna date myself here, like 98, 99, like right before the 2000s. I think, if my math's right. If not, oh well. But we started playing around there. And he had 2nd edition. And that was the one I started with. And for 2nd edition, it is so different from now, because AC or armor class, because I don't know how many people will listen to this and know exactly what we're talking about, but armor class is like your ability to avoid getting hit. So it's like your armor's thickness, its ability to deflect stuff, mixed with your dexterity to be able to avoid or dodge something. But AC in 2nd edition had to be as low as possible. So you wanted a 1, 2, or 3 to avoid being hit. Whereas now they've switched the system to where the numbers add up, and you want a higher AC and you want to roll above it with your added bonuses. And if you get above it, you hit someone. So it was kind of a reverse system in some ways. But I think the absolute coolest thing in 2nd edition that they had, and I hope I'm remembering this right, but they had a like brawling chart in 2nd edition. So if you didn't want to do like a normal sword fight, you were just in a pub, and obviously you have an overpowered character that has 100 health and a character that's a bar person that has 5 health. You could use this system, and they could just have a bar fight where you would roll, and it would determine like what punch you threw, how much damage it did, and that would determine how the fight went, as opposed to playing out a normal fight. But it was just the little cool things that they've taken away or changed or made better. But like, so many different people, if you see where they started in Dungeons and Dragons and where they are now, like it's so different, but it's still the same core, fun, creative game.
So for you two, and I can answer after, but if you were going to be, your character, say you created your character for your D&D campaign, what would you consider yourselves to be? Lawful, evil, neutral, chaotic, good, chaotic. What would you consider yourself, or what would you choose for your specific character? And when you go, villain or hero.
Hmm. Like characters we've created, or if we were just to roll up a D&D character.
If you were to create your D&D character for your campaign, like what would they be?
Oh, okay.
A brand new campaign.
Uh, and I've done neutral, which was one of my favorite characters to play. But I think if I were to do another character and play in a campaign, I'd want to, and I've also done lawful good. I'd like to do lawful neutral, where you have your own kind of like a Punisher. You have your own set of codes you live by, and you just that's your guiding through life. So I think lawful neutral would probably be the next one that I want to do.
Okay. How about you,
So
Ryan?
I've almost always kind of like gone chaotic good with mine. A lot of the times I play a cleric, and in the D&D world, if you play a cleric, you have to stick to your alignment, because if you don't, you fall out of favor with your god, and if you fall out of favor with your god or deity, you get stripped of all of your stuff. So like you don't get your powers, you lose the fact that you're a cleric, so like your stats go down, stuff like that. And it depends on your DM or your dungeon master, the person running the game, how strict they are with that stuff. But say your chaotic good is very I do just things, but I don't really have a plan. I'm very all over the map. I could go very just with my actions, or I could go, you know what, I'm going to destroy this town because this town is evil, and maybe I'm going a little too far by wiping out the entire town, but I'm doing it for the right cause, so I'm causing this chaos for good in the end. Um, so that one's a little easier to play because you have a kind of a wider array to play. But if I were to try and go opposite, lawful evil is one of the most interesting ones to me, because it's truly a mobster. You're evil, but you live by your own set of codes, and you're very devout to your set of codes. So like a gangster in the old like 1920s, 1950s mobster New York type,
Shoot,
Chicago.
Kingpin.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
exactly, Kingpin would be a great example of that.
Mhm.
But just you have a set of codes and you never stray from those, and you always hold up, and they tend to do good deeds too, where they're like supporting their community,
Mhm.
but in a way where they're doing it corrupt, and that money trickles back into the people they want to help, but they're still doing clearly evil things. So I mean that
Yeah.
that kind of character is always fun idea for me.
Mhm.
You said chaos, and all I could think of is this. I have a dark elf in my series called Soramai, and he's very much a chaotic evil, and
Mhm.
he's always just like, "Let's go cause some chaos!" Ha 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 ha. That's his voice too, so it's super annoying. Um,
Oh.
but if I was gonna go, I'm kind of an outlaw. I'm kind of a morally gray type person, so I really like unlawful neutral, and I know lawful is, because you have your own, but the set of rules. But unlawful neutral follow rules too. They just pick and choose which ones they deem are important and which ones aren't. So depending on
Mhm.
the situation, they're going to be like, I'll follow these rules because I believe they have their purpose, or I'm willing to break the law and the rules to get done what needs to be done. So they're the very morally gray aspect realm of things. So I
Yeah.
like the unlawful neutral. But if I was going to go with another character, definitely neutral evil, evil neutral. Um, Somebody who's evil, but they're kind of neutral about things. Again, morally gray. They do bad things, but again, it's when they choose. That's the best way that I can think of, because unlawful evil would just be who's evil and just does whatever they want.
Mhm.
Um, so
Which
I think because lawful, neutral evil would be somebody who's evil, but they're almost kind of
they don't have
tips
a
the
target
scale.
for their evil, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if there's a cosmic war going on, they don't help either side with their evil. They just do whatever they want, and it tends to be evil in that
Mhm.
regard. Like I'm going to benefit me, and regardless of who it hurts, like I could hurt the evil side or I could hurt the good side. It's just what I'm doing is evil.
And
No,
I think,
okay, I couldn't go with that then. I have to stick with
yeah,
unlawful neutral. That's my
yeah.
realm. Lawful neutral and unlawful neutral. There could be some cool characters um to do in that realm. What were you gonna say,
Yep.
Ryan?
I was just gonna say, neutral evil, or like we always called it, Nevil was like the abbreviation for it. That's where when you have a group of players and they have to work together towards a goal, but they have different alignments. One's more of a good character, one's more of an evil. The people who want to be morally gray or do shisty things while you're playing always tend to gravitate towards neutral evil and still be able to play with the other players. But as soon as you get into like chaotic evil, your party's going downhill quick, because like there's no way you could be chaotic evil and have a good person in your party, because they just constantly cannot have the same goal.
Mhm.
And that's where like the interactive play of Dungeons and Dragons comes in, where there's a careful consideration. Because if you're playing a rogue, you're probably not going to have a very good moral alignment. You could be kind of a Robin Hood, where you steal from the rich and you give to the poor, but that's very far and few between. Most of the time you're playing a rogue, I'm stealing for myself, like, and I'm stealing from my own party members. I'm
Yeah.
whispering the DM saying like, "Oh, everybody's going to sleep. I'm gonna stay up an hour extra, and I'm gonna steal a couple gold from everybody's pouch if I can." And then
Mhm.
you're rolling to see if you're successful with that. So I think those alignments really play into how you interact with each other.
I'd even say Robin Hood too is probably like a lawful neutral almost, as even
Yeah.
more
He
so than
is.
good.
Hmm.
I like the neutral realm of things because
Yep.
that's your morally gray territory right there. Your
Hmm.
anti-hero territory.
It gives you
Deadpool,
more custom,
Punisher.
like gives you more creativity when you're role playing, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you never know. It could tip either way what the
Yeah.
character chooses to do. But anyway, scenario for you guys right now.
Sure.
Here's your options. I'll give us six. There's plenty of options in D&D on who you could be, but you have the option of wizard,
Mhm.
high matron, healer, assassin, craftsman, or we'll say knight. And here are the starting attributes that you get. Wizard, you can deal 10% more damage. You have an intelligence boost when you start off, and your natural prone abilities to finding magical artifacts. But you are not as skilled in hand-to-hand combat with swords and weapons. You are more focused on the arcane. If you had a high matron, your abilities are going to be higher in the you're still decently intelligent. You start off with a magic boost because you can perform spells. It's like the female version of a healer sorceress combination, kind of. And same thing, except you're a little bit better with weapons than the wizard, and you're prone to being assassinated a lot more. Your healer, you start off with a 50% heal boost where you can have a 50-yard radius where you can heal all those around you for a period of 1 minute and 30 seconds in combat. However, once you recharge, it takes you at least 10 minutes and you suck with weapons, but you do know how to make yourself invisible with invisibility cloaks. What did I say? I said assassin, right?
Hmm.
Assassin, you're an expert. You start off with a 10% boost in dexterity and strength. Um, and intelligence. You are a master manipulator and have a boost with your silence when you're walking, and you're an expert with pretty much every weapon that there is. Who else did I say? I said craftsman. Craftsman, you start off with a 20% boost on craftsman abilities, being able to create weapons. You are able to learn magic if you find a book, so you can create enchanted objects, and you can use them because you start off with a 5% aura boost or mana, whichever one you prefer. So you have the ability to learn magic as a craftsman. So you could be a duel eventually. you could become strong enough to like match up. So that's kind of a cool one to think of. But you're also slower in combat. You're slow to move around, and you're not as intelligent as the other choices. And then for a knight, you are you start off with a 10% boost of camaraderie, where people are going to want to follow you. You're good with leadership and diplomacy. You're an expert with long range and short range weapons, but no magical abilities. You start off with a 10% boost in dexterity, strength, and speed. And you have the ability to communicate with animals.
Okay, so just to go through your list real quick, the first wizard was like almost spot on with D&D's classification of wizard. The matron did kind of align with the sorcerer, so that I had never actually really thought about the matron, but that actually kind of aligned with your description there. Then we went healer. Pretty much just the clerics kind of have healing spells.
Druid somewhat.
But the funny thing you mentioned about having like sucky weapon abilities is most clerics are actually capable with weapons, but if you go into a party and you're playing with a cleric that's like running headfirst into the battle and trying to do damage and then neglecting their healing abilities, we always called it a battle cleric, wipes parties. You're going in trying to fight instead and neglecting your healing abilities. Boom, out the window. You're not even, why are you a healer if you're not going to heal? The assassin really aligned with rogue, kind of bardish, but more so rogue. And then the craftsman, I don't know that there's a class,
It
but
reminded me of
there's
Artificer.
yeah, because I was gonna say they added that in 5th edition, right? So Artificer in 3rd edition they had tinkering was like a skill, so like gnomes are really good at building devices and stuff like that. So that one kind of aligned there. But your most interesting one to me was your knight was kind of a mix of bard, ranger, paladin, and fighter all in one. And to be honest, at first, if you were going to go straight paladin with the knight, I was like, no, thank you. I'm not the super righteous paladin. I have to follow this one oath type thing. But the way you describe that, like that's hands down the choice because it takes like some of the coolest classes and combines it all into one specific one. So I think that was probably like your coolest one out of those, and that's probably what I would lean to.
So you would choose knight. Remember, again, I'm LitRPG territory. Like I'm a LitRPG writer, so I'm a little bit of an outlaw. I don't really follow the D&D outlines. I create my own classes, which is what I like about it. But
I just wanted to make the connection there between the two, so I absolutely like it.
Heck yeah.
So Caramon is the Raceland's brother.
Yes.
So I'm with you, Ryan. I think, and that's the thing that's distinct between D&D and LitRPG. D&D has a very strict set of rules. It's got classes that are A, B, C, and D, and it's got races that are A, B, C, and D. And you can mix and match and create customization. You can multi-class and stuff, but I'm with Ryan in the sense that the knight that you created sounds like a very fun multi-class. You'd have to find the right campaign to play it in, and normally that's how I determine what I want to play, is what campaign we're going to play in. But for just the fun of it, I think making a multi-class character from all of those classes and then making it work would be a lot of fun.
And that's why I love LitRPG and creating game-let books, because you can do that. Now that was only part one of the question, gentlemen.
All right, let's go.
You chose your knight. Okay.
Dual
so this
knight.
is what you choose. Me, I choose craftsman. All right. Okay. That would be my class, because I like the ability to be able to tinker with weapons, but also to find rare hidden magical artifacts and teach myself how to use them to eventually be able to have my own enchanted artifacts that I can not only use magic with, but use magic myself. And I'm the only one who can build those specific weapons and tools. I may be a wee bit slower, but guess what? If I can teleport, it doesn't matter. Anyways, all right, you've got your knight. So here's your options for starting races. You can go human. You can go orc. You can go elf. You can go half giant. and you can go goblin. We'll just say for the heck of it. Okay, so those are all your races. Now, you have your base races, and then you have your sub races. So you choose one, and then you choose what you would want to sub race it with. So for me, I would go human, and I would go probably half human, half elf for my craftsman, because elves automatically add more intelligence boost. They're usually pretty inept to weapons and magic, and so it'd be a perfect half combination. So I'd be half human, half elf. What would you guys go with for your knights?
So it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking LitRPG, I need to know what the boosts were. But if we're talking strictly D&D, I normally do human because there's a variant of the human, and you can get an additional feat when you start. So I like the building of that. So adding a feat from level 1 on, so I have extra bonuses and stuff. But you could also do like an orc, human half orc would be more strength with their fighting style. So normally my go-to is human.
Okay.
So for the listeners listening at home that may or may not know a lot about Dungeons and Dragons, there's something called Homebrew, which is where you take the base rules of Dungeons and Dragons and you take it in whatever direction you want. You can completely change the rules, but you're using their loose system to kind of change things around and make your own game that fits you and the people with you. So that's a lot. Like, not all this is strictly what's in Dungeons and Dragons, but that's the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons, is that system allows you to do all of these things without having to put the time into, like, how does attacking work? How does movement work from player to player? How do turns work? Because you have all those bases and you're just changing the fun facts to make it your own. In this scenario, I love making unorthodox characters. So if I'm playing the big beefy taking the damage fighter, so if I'm playing the knight, you would normally want like someone who's huge, that's going to be intimidating, who's going to take all the damage. But in this situation, I'd have to be the goblin
Knew it.
coming out there as the knight.
I was hoping somebody would choose
I
it.
knew
But also, if I'm sub racing that with something, it'd have to be half giant, half goblin. But he has the size of a goblin, but like the bulky strength that you wouldn't expect from the half giant.
So
blood.
he's just this little short green looking thing with these bulgy looking things, just like
It's just
"I'm a
flipping
goblin,
people around.
booyah," and he could just grip people with his little 3 fingers and just freaking just tossing like horses and like other full-size giants with his little like see this little goblin running on the field. He's got his little sword and he's just like and then the giant looks down like yeah, right. Goblin picks him up and just freaking flings him around in a circle and just right into the mountainside.
Because I always played gnomes. Like, I love gnomes, and so I always played like small little gnomes whenever I'd play, or halflings are tiny too. So like, I just like those characters. They're more suited to like bards and rogues in traditional D&D. But when you're able to take it, like, yes, you play the perfect race with the perfect class in Dungeons and Dragons, you make an overpowered character because their bonuses align together. But if you can take an untraditional character and make both the story and their abilities fit your fighting and tactical style within the game, or your role-playing style within the game, like, that's the beauty of just like, it doesn't have to be the big buff fighter that goes in. It could be the skinny, like barely able to wield his sword, but he came from a line of fighters and he's super intelligent. He should have been a wizard, but he was handed his father's sword. And he's like, well, I'm going to have to try and make this work because I have to carry on the lineage. And then does he succeed all the time? No, he probably gets carried by the DPSer in the back that blurts everybody down before he gets a chance to swing his sword. Or everybody's like, oh, let's go target that guy. They all converge on him, but his team wipes them out. He's just like the easy target, but he never gets damaged because we kill things too fast. I mean, like, that's the beauty of like creating stories and characters that don't make sense, but you can make them work.
See,
So
that's my favorite thing. So when I play D&D, I'm a very serious D&D player. Like I like, this is the goal, this is what we got to do. I like cutting up and everything, but like my goal oriented, we have to win this campaign is where I play.
Mhm.
But when I do one shots, which again for listeners is a normally a 1 to 2 session campaign where you have a specific goal to get done, and it's a very quick story, kind of like a short story. Uh, that's when I have fun with that kind of stuff because I don't care what happens in the one shot. So I've created like wonky characters or bizarre things, and a lot of homebrew I test in those one shots. Because if you're not careful, homebrew could get out of hand. Uh,
Yeah,
but
easily.
oh yeah, but especially in the earlier editions,
Yeah.
it can get wild. But that's where I have the fun. And like you said, Ryan, you could have an amazing story with the craziest characters that aren't what's the term that we use uh, optimized, not the most
Yeah.
optimized characters.
Or classic in the terms of what normally fits.
Hmm.
So you answered part 2. Now we got to keep going.
All right.
All right. You have the option, and this is getting to a scenario. I'm sorry, I'm just working it
I
step by step.
love it. It's like building a campaign right now, so let's go for it.
Yep.
Now, for those who are listening, just so you know, this is very similar to a lit RPG
Mhm.
or to an RR MMO RPG. Very similar to how people write them in the books and stuff. So that's kind of just my style. So if you're listening to this, this is similar to D&D, but not completely the same. You're offered 3 starting attributes. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna grab my laptop. You guys keep
D&D.
while you're choosing. Here you can choose a starting object that you get. So you either enchanted weapon or enchanted book. So for your magical starting object, enchanted weapon, enchanted book, or a familiar. Which would you guys choose for that?
Ooh. Uh, so
Ooh.
if we're talking about that knight in the terms of it, it was kind of like a ranger bard fighter mix. I kind of like the idea of a familiar, especially if I'm playing that small goblin type character, because then I do have something that's more menacing alongside of me. But again, if I'm playing a goblin and I have a familiar, I've got to feel like it's got to go along the lines what a goblin would have. So I don't know if it'd be like an oversized toad or something like that that's lashing and like keeping opponents down with its tongue, like so you're entangling essentially or snaring somebody with this giant toad. But I can't think of what other animals goblins would kind of interchange with, but like that's kind of where reptilian something.
Maybe a rabbit or something that's very, very uneasy to detect.
Yeah, I mean
Something
it
that
could
can
go
have.
more sneaky as well.
Mhm.
But I was thinking like if I'm a goblin fighter where I'm tiny, like having a familiar that's larger but on uh normally large, then that kind of like has that contradiction falling through the whole character there. But yeah, I also like
Yeah.
smaller animals might be he's using them to scout or to be sneaky or something like that. But what do
I
you think,
love
Alfred?
the idea of a familiar, but I'm gonna go a different route just to be different in this case, and I think have a magic weapon, almost like a King Arthur kind of sword and stone thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like
but
Seven
I
Deadly
think
Sins.
yeah, exactly. Just because that familiar would fit so well with a character like that. But to have a sword, I think, or an axe or something, whatever the flavor would be, I think would be cool.
What would you want your weapon to do that would
Ooh.
assist or
Uh-uh.
even
He doesn't get to choose. See,
oh,
enchanted weapon is determined by the campaign itself. So he
true.
has to discover along the way. So you just get to choose a base enchanted object. And that doesn't
Okay.
you don't get to determine what that does until later when you rank up. So for now, all you get to choose is the weapon. You don't know what it's going to do yet.
So I may
Okay.
have a bunny or I may have a beefy toad. I don't know yet.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, essentially
So
yes.
yeah, okay. I'm cool with that. I'll still
You
roll
choose
familiar.
you choose your starting package, but when you start the campaign and you delve into that universe, as you go along and you rank up, you run into your familiar. You may have to fight it first to overtake it with a spell in order to make it your familiar, or it might bond with you naturally. Whereas for Alfred, your sword or your bow or whatever you choose for your weapon may present itself because you defeated a boss or because you were simply in a hidden cave looking for magical runes and you were able to decipher with get through with a high lock picking ability and get into these dungeons and find this ancient rune where a weapon's waiting, and all it says is enchanted legendary artifact, weapon, base damage, blah blah blah. The ability to rank up through finding spells and books along your campaign. Do you accept or do you choose not to? You either take it or you don't. And
So
as you
fun
go,
little
you'll learn.
side note. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but fun little side note. Tying it back to D&D and Homebrew is I actually did something like that in one of my campaigns. I gave my dad, who was playing in one of my games, he had an axe, and the axe did X. I don't remember exactly what it did. Gave him like a boost to attacks and stuff like that. So then he's going along and he's finding out these little clues about this weapon, and it used to belong to this ultra powerful warrior. So then he found the warrior's gauntlets, and that added additional bonuses to his attack. And then he found a helmet which allowed him to see certain things. And then he got a shield that would circle around. And each time he found another piece of this armor, it boosted the overall armor. So like it was a +2 or a +1 to start. By the time he was done, it was a +5 weapon. The boots he found allowed him to walk faster. So it was similar along those lines, Nathan, where I had built in little upgrades every time he found another piece of the armor until he had all the armor, and then it did more, which was pretty cool. I think the gauntlets added
That's
force
awesome.
damage.
For you, Alfred, your starting human attributes would be 10 intelligence, 8 strength, 4 dexterity, 2 vision, 6 constitution, and 15 willpower.
Ooh,
And all your attributes can be ranked up by finding supremacy class points, rare artifacts, or quest completions when leveling up.
cool.
6
Ryan,
Constitution would be rough,
It would be rough,
but
but I think it would be
but that's
different.
okay.
It
Yeah,
wouldn't translate properly.
yeah.
and Ryan, for the sake of keeping things similar, yours would be the same. All of
Okay.
ours would be the same. We'll just say for now.
Mhm.
So, humans are an evolved species. They're quick to learn and can easily create alliances faster than other species. They learn magic at a rate of 10% faster, and they can learn special skills of deception and camaraderie at level 5. So now we've chosen our artifacts. Me, I would choose a book because that would allow me to enhance my craftsman abilities quicker and to be able to create I don't need to find enchanted weapons. I can create them myself by leveling up my ability to understand the arcane and knowledge throughout the universe. So all of our characters are on a quest, and we run into Hataric Jaw, who has a 500-meter whisper spell active. And our goal is to save the endangered group of baby puppies along with the civilians.
Do we have to save the civilians, or can we just save the puppies?
Yeah, I mean, what was our alignment again?
What were your
Uh,
how are you going to what are you going to do to win this? Are you going to accept this boss level right away? Are you going to go around the smaller quests and try to level up first?
Uh, this is a
I
good
guess it depends on
question.
how much time we have. Like, are the
Uh,
puppies in immediate danger of being hurt?
I should say his whisper spell is slowly driving the puppies insane and turning them into giant wolves. For every hour that the puppies are left alone with the endangered people, the puppies are turning into wolves with the ability to um, rip full-grown giants apart limb from limb, and
half
also
giant.
with the enact ability and focus to kill any human species, as well as that's for every hour that they're left. So at the 10-hour mark, they'd be full evil wolves. And after that, every hour after the 10-hour mark, at a 50% rate, they begin to merge with the human beings to become animal-human hybrids, and are going to create their own alliance where they work for Hataric Jaw to take over the entire land. So
So
his
we can
goal is to
speak
turn
with
everybody into, what's that?
I was going to say, Ryan and I can speak with animals. So giving them a few hours to beef up and get a little strong, we may be able to influence them through conversation to side with us while that whisper spell's going on. I don't know how much I can get done in a few hours as far as leveling up goes, but
Okay, you have a week.
okay,
Each day, by midweek, the puppies would be full wolves. And by the
okay,
end of the week, they would be hybrids. And after that, each week, these animal-human hybrids would go out from city to city, creating and turning everybody into animal-human hybrids to make an entire land of hybrids.
So I prefer the 10-hour scenario
limit.
just because we have less time and we have to act. So like in the middle of Alfred's speech there, I was ready to go full Leroy Jenkins and runs straight in while Alfred's mid tactical explanation of how we should approach the situation, and
Remember,
then
love
just
it.
get wiped out by puppies. But
That's the
without
way to go.
magical protection,
Yeah.
you need to at least have one magic protection or one healer that knows the ability to protect the mind from spells, from
Well,
mind spells.
that'd have to be you right now in our
Yeah.
trio because we're not the magical
Okay, so
side with two knights.
I'll create 3 artifacts, which are cloaks that you wear.
Mhm.
While the cloak is on, your mind is protected from any magic spell for a period of up to 5 hours. Every hour after that, it weakens by 10% until it is null, and it has to be recharged by finding another rune or book with a new spell to re-enchant it. So that gives us a little bit of time to be able to get in there and have a bit of protection.
Mhm.
However, once you are within the whisper vicinity, your mind is going to be attacked, so you may see visions here and there. You're still yourself, but you may be slowed down from time to time.
So with Hataric Jaw and us going after him, his ability with the whispers that we talked about in our previous episode, for people who haven't seen that, go back and listen or watch to it right now. But with that villain we created, what would that be attacking in the sense of Dungeons and Dragons? If he's whispering it, would it be our intelligence to know that he's whispering counteracts his spell, or would it be like our constitution to withstand his mind games? Because if so, we need some stronger constitution to run into this battle. But I like the magic items as well, but I was just kind of curious, what would that play against for his abilities?
All right. Constitution's good. There's a forest 5 clicks from the area where he's keeping the whisper spell. Now, this forest is home to a rock city where the inhabitants are peaceful. They grow gardens and a lot of herbs and remedies and stuff like that. You can find a Dracon root there, which is an herb that when you take it boosts your mind's ability for constitution and your body's willingness to fight against injury, but also it boosts your constitution, which allows you to help with other things like magic spells. So it doesn't protect you right away against magic spells, but it boosts your constitution and your health for a period of 10 hours. But you have to make it first. You have to go, you have to make friends with the people in the city, and you have to maybe go on a side quest to bring them some more herbs from another city like a click away and bring it back for them to make the Draken root into the serum or the potion that you need to boost your constitution.
I think that's a good plan, because I think you tied in leadership and diplomacy with that knight class, so we would be able to I feel like be diplomatic with that group, again, depending on our alignment and how we choose to handle that situation. But I think that would play into being able to obtain that route, and then also with our magic cloaks, be able to attack that situation. Now, the real question for me would be, as a trio, and we're deciding how we want to go about this. We've got the route to protect us. We've got the cloaks to protect us. Are we removing those puppies from the situation so that they're not transformed, or are we going right at the big bad and trying to stop the situation? Like, tactically, how would we as a trio decide to handle that? If Alfred wants to start, we can go around or kind of spitball how we would want to tactically go about that.
I like this because I've played in several campaigns where things like this happen, and the beauty of D&D is these choices matter. Depending on your DM or how well they've planned, they could say, okay, well, if you don't remove the puppies immediately, now you have an additional army of enemies that will flank you, or if you do remove them, now all of a sudden the villain has corrupted another town, or their power has grown in the time it's taken you. I've always been one to eliminate the threat right now because the big bad's going to be the big bad. So I say remove the puppies from the situation to limit any future conflict, or we can immediately impact the power that uh, Yarick has. So we take those puppies out of the situation. He doesn't have half human, half wolf puppy people to attack us. So that's my take. Save them right now.
I'm opposite from you. I'm an unlawful neutral. So I'm looking at the situation as be willing to lose once in order to win in the end. So might have to sacrifice what's already in that whisper vicinity to go around the rest of Windanao and create alliances and create magical barriers of our own, and eventually figure out how to do an anti-whisper spell to block Ataric's abilities. So while we're going and doing these side quests, we're using diplomacy, we're gaining arcane abilities, building our mana, our health, our constitution, and we're creating these alliances. I'm a craftsman, so I'm going to go around and figure out with spells or make friends with high matrons and other healers and magic types to create boundary spells in different cities to create a trigram ceiling all around the entire country that each city that we create an alliance with enacts that as a point on the map. So each point on the map is created. Once the last point is created, it will connect as a seal spell and it will seal the villain away. But it takes time. So you have to be willing to sacrifice a couple things in order to protect the larger majority. So you go in right away, you're taking the chance that you either lose and you have to start over and rebuild your stats from the ground up, or you go around with little mini bosses. Ryan being half goblin might be able to recruit some goblins, or might be able to find a spell to gain the goblins alliance. I'm half elf, so I might be able to find some elves and figure out they're very strong when it comes to spoken word and magic. So they might be able to figure out how to do an anti-whisper spell. And you being a human, you can go around to all the human alliances and tell them this is what's going on from kingdom to kingdom. So as long as we can create enough alliances in the cities, we might lose a couple, but as long as we can avoid the villains and take the smaller bosses out as we go, we can finish that trigram sealing spell, and at the end it'll connect and it'll seal our villain away without ever just one fight at the end. We've sealed him into his vicinity. We go in with the anti-whisper spell, and he's null, and we give him a choice: turn over a new leaf or be sent to the soul realm for all eternity.
So this is the kind of the beauty of having different minds in a group, but also the crux, because ultimately we would have to make one decision or split the party, and it would be a diplomacy thing of trying to figure out what plan we would want to go to. Because would I want to sacrifice one town? Honestly, it could be the better decision in the long run if we were truly not ready. Would we be headstrong and Alfred and I are like, no, we got to go in there right now. And then we come face to face with the big bad trying to move out those dogs and save that one city right away. And we get wiped. And in a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, if you get wiped, Nathan was dead on. Your character's gone. You're rolling a new one and you're starting over back at level 1 again. And anything you've gained, the story's progressed and you're that much further behind. Now there are homebrews for like reviving characters, but in most of those, it's like ridiculously expensive. It's a whole ordeal to bring somebody back. Most people don't like refuse to do it. So you have all those scenarios going on in that. So I would probably lean towards like if we knew enough about the big bad that we thought we needed to unite everybody, I would lean towards that way. If I didn't know enough about him, my type of character would be, this is the task in front of me. I need to tackle this task, then move to the next one, and then move to the next one. So I would probably go in and try to save that town and end up failing for that. So just a side tangent. I haven't played a whole lot of 5th edition. I played years and years, like a decade of 3rd edition. But the 5th edition campaign we started was like the Curse of Strahd. And I made it an hour into that campaign. We went into a house and we heard like scratching from a door underneath a table or something that was locked down. And like the DM was doing everything impossible to be like, don't open that door. And we were like, well, that means we're opening the door, right? And obviously we were ill prepared for what was there. And the DM could have changed it to be something lesser or something we could handle. But the ultimate goal of that campaign, that was not the case. And we were supposed to walk away from the situation and better prepare ourselves. So that's the kind of the fun thing with Dungeons and Dragons is you can make the wrong decision and screw yourself over, or you can make the wrong decision and make it work for you too. So
like in that scenario, granted, in this case, Nathan's character would kind of be like the wizard lore expert kind of person, but depends on if we know all that information. Do we know about that triangulation spell? Do we know if it'll work? Because in most cases, you don't. And the dungeon master has the story behind the screen, and they know all the little things that'll work. And there have been times as the DM, I'm like, wow, the player just came up with a really cool one. Yeah, that's what I planned the whole time. Or they're talking about something. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work, but you guys are free to try. So in that situation, for me, it's rough because and again, difference between LitRPG and D&D is dice rolls. They are very important. I may have very high diplomacy, but if I botch it and roll a 1, which a 1 is bad, 20 is good on the dice of 1 through 20 for the listeners. So if you roll a 1, doesn't matter how good your stats are, probably not gonna succeed unless you really role play well enough to impress the DM. And they're like, you know what? Yeah, you fumbled a little bit, but you're good enough. So that's 7 to 10 different groups of people that we mentioned that we'd have to go to and hope that we didn't screw up. So it's that's the big plan that I think would unfold as you're playing a campaign. But in that situation where I just have the direct scene that's coming in front of me, I would go and save the puppies.
All right, so in the land of Wind and Dell, there's an enchanted object, okay? The holy dice. Now, if you can find these dice, they're going to raise your attribute of luck, and they're going to give you a better chance in any situation. Now, however, you can only roll the holy dice once in a 24-hour period. Whatever number you roll is going to boost your chances by that percent with a 0 on the end. So a 1 gives you a 10% higher chance of a better outcome. 2, 3, all the way up to 6, which is 60%. So nothing's going to give you 100% of higher luck. But with the holy dice, you have the ability to get all the way up to 120% if you're lucky. But you have to find both dice for that to happen. Each separate dice is hidden in a different location. And in order to find them, you have to get through different runes, beat different bosses, and eventually find the holy dice. But you can only roll them once in a 24-hour period, and you can use the dice, each individual die, to help you find the other. And once you have both, they can be used once in a 24-hour period to give you a higher chance. And before you roll, you have to choose what you want your luck to be for. So you say, for this roll, I want my luck to be for blah, blah, blah. You roll the dice, and once it rolls, boom, there you go.
I mean, that'd be a really cool item to have built into your campaign, and that would significantly help the randomization of the dice rolls, which is partially part of the fun thing with Dungeons and Dragons. Is you could have the most OP character, and like Alfred said, if you roll a 1, your stats aren't really going to help you succeed all the time. And in some campaigns, 1, it doesn't matter if you have a plus 20 to whatever you're doing. 1 is an automatic failure and 20 is an automatic success. So you could go fight a dragon with 40 AC and you have plus 5 to hit. So if you roll a 20 normally and you get plus 5, 25 is the highest you could hit. But in D&D, if you automatically succeed, you roll a 20, you automatically succeed. It wouldn't matter if that thing's AC is way higher than your ability to hit it. Your automatic success would count as a success to hit them. But I would love something like this. And I think they really went in a good way with 5th edition because they added in inspiration, I think was what it was. And then disadvantage. So you can roll 2 die, and like in an inspiration situation, you roll 2 and you take the higher number as opposed to whichever one rolled lower because like you're boosted. And in the disadvantage situation, you have to take the lower number because like you were in a prone position or the opponent had an advantage over you. So like that kind of thing plays into similar to what the item you're talking about, just to tie it back a little bit, but that kind of makes that connection and kind of breaks that fourth wall. But I think that is the key thing to like lit RPG, MMORPGs and Dungeons and Dragons top games. I'm blanking on what we call them, but that there is an element of you're playing the game and you're going through the story, but there's also the element of physical, like what I can't control, the randomness that I'm actually throwing into it, or this person over here, like we come up with a perfect plan out of 5 people, and this one person that is a linchpin in the plan's like, nope, no, that's not what I'm doing. You have the perfect plan, but no. So,
And while you have the holy dice, you also have the cursed dice, which is the opposite. So if another gang, another group of people get the cursed dice, they can roll that to get an advantage over you by cursing whatever luck that you have if they're within vicinity. And you can also have, I think it would be just cool, like actually I might incorporate this into my book, but have just different dice throughout the land. One set of dice is called the reverse dice. So when you're fighting against somebody, they roll their dice for luck. You roll your dice for reverse. It reverses their luck onto them and they get bad luck. And your luck increases. Or you go against somebody who has cursed dice. They're trying to curse you, but you roll your reverse dice and it reverses as a counter curse against the other person. And you just have different dice spread throughout the land that each have their own ability. And I think that could be cool for specific rules so that there's nothing that's too overpowered. So when you're having a dice fight, one person's dice does one thing and another person's does another thing. So who will win? If you beat the other person, you get their dice.
then you kind of have a double advantage because you could roll to have an advantage over them and you roll to up your luck. But yeah.
Yes, you can merge when you gain somebody's dice, you can merge them with your own. And now you have both abilities in one set of dice.
So I started in 5th edition, but this kind of stuff I've played 3rd edition, 3.5, and the customization and the abilities that they give you in 3.5 are something that I really enjoyed playing. And this is kind of reminds me a little bit more of that, like the customization, the abilities, the creation is more open than 5e. They kind of streamlined it to make it a little bit more accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And I do think I like 5e. It's very simple to start. You can teach people a lot easier. But 3.5's customization was just so awesome.
And I really enjoyed that too, because the feats and the skills that you had, you could counteract the fact that like you were an intelligent player, but you didn't have like very many defenses against someone coming up and trying to stab you, but you could take certain abilities or cross class. And that's where like immediately when Nathan started describing all the different classes, my mind went to 3.5 because they put out like 30 books for third edition, and after a while it was like you had 8 basic classes. I'm maybe lowballing it, might be 10 to 12, and they took all those classes and started making like, okay, you're a rogue and you're a ranger, now you're a ninja archer, and like you could cross class, so you had to have like 2 levels in rogue and you had to have like 2 levels in ranger, but as soon as you did that, you got to take 1 level from then on in your cross class, and it would combine those 2 classes into like, I'm going to make this character. And it opened up an entire world for people to kind of change the way the campaign had gone, because they were playing third edition for like probably 15 to 20 years before fourth
Fourth.
failed immediately. Fourth came out and they were like, what did you just do to this game? And then they were like, that never happened. Here's fifth edition. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. What, fourth? What? No, we just skipped a number. Never happened. But so I mean, like, you're absolutely right with that third edition. You had more customization and that stuff. And again, like when Nathan brought up this idea, these cross classes, like I liked tying it back into like what would they be in the D&D world. But third edition did exactly what you did, Nathan. It took these different classes and merged them together into something different that made it more fun and exciting and not so cookie cutter. And that's kind of where Homebrew comes in, is you have more freedom to change the rules.
And that the dice thing reminds me of the lucky feat in 5e, because you'd
Mhm.
have 3 charges that recharged after a 24-hour period, and you could use them before the results of the dice were told. But like, let's say the DM rolled something, and you're like, I'm going to use a lucky point. So you've got 3 of them. I just use 1. I roll the dice, and I get to decide if I like choose the higher or the lower dice. So it would, so if I rolled a 1 and I know they're trying to attack me, I'm just going to choose the 1, regardless of what they rolled. They could have rolled a 1 also, but at least I know it's not going to hit me. And
Yeah.
then if it's the opposite, like I'll roll, I got a 5, let me roll again. 20. Yep, I'm going to use one of my lucky points, and I just got a 20. And that kind of reminded me of the dice that you were talking about.
Mhm.
And there's something cool else you could do it. And it's kind of a fun episode because we're going back between, Homebrew, D&D, and LitRPG, and
Yeah.
like some of the subtle differences and also similarities. But, I am going to incorporate this into my books. I'm totally writing a LitRPG for this. But with the dice,
Definitely, you
let's
should.
say your character gets thrown into the virtual reality game, right? And you start off with a wristband with a clear square glass housing unit. Inside this housing unit, you start off with 1 die, okay? And this die, you get how many ever numbers are on it to roll it, right? So that's 6. So each time you roll it, you lose that number that it lands on, all right? And it's going to give you a certain attribute or a certain skill or something that's going to aid you in whatever quest that you're in to hopefully upgrade your die. But here's the thing. If you roll it and you run out of the numbers on your die, it will disappear and your magic abilities are gone. So you have to go find another die by making alliances or whatever else. However, you can fit a total of 4 die in your wrist device, and they can be of different attributes. So each die can help you with different things. The same thing, no matter how many you have, once the number disappears, you run out of that die and it will disappear. But then you could have another class. So when you start your character creation, you can choose. You want to be a dice roller. You want to be a card thrower. So somebody who can toss cards up in the air like solitaire style, and will choose your fate for that outcome. So you get like a queen, a jack, and an ace. And whichever of the higher's ability is going to allow you to summon a golem statue, or it'll allow you to like summon a fighter or a certain spell. But once you use that card, you're out of it. And in order to find more, you have to complete quests. And you can have legendary cards too, which allow you to have an even increased ability. So you got dice users, you've got card throwers, and then you could have even something else where you could call them like a puppet master of sorts. So they use like certain magic and enchanted artifacts to control other people or to control other objects, and their fate is determined on based on what type of string that they have for the different elements of the earth and different things like that. I don't know. There's just some things to think about, and you could have somebody who's like a watch master, so their ability to control their abilities and to have a timely manner of their attacks. So they have an enchanted watch. So for every like 1 minute on the clock, once they click the watch, they have an advanced ability where they can predict movements or do whatever else. But once that time runs out, they run out of one of the numbers on the clock, and they're only down to a certain amount of hours left on that clock that they can use. I don't know. That's just, it's cool. Like,
But so to kind of tie all this back in, that's the cool thing. Like all three of us are writers, but that's what Dungeons and Dragons, especially if you're a DM or if you're playing something that's not Dungeons and Dragons and they call it Game Master or GM or whatever you're particularly in, the creativity and the story building was one of my favorite things. Like I loved DMing, but I hated when I DM'd that I couldn't truly play a character because I knew the story. So it's kind of hard to play both at the same time. It's doable, but as a DM, I loved creating items. Like what you're doing right now, Nathan, I would spend all night thinking about, oh man, I got to go write this down. This item fits this character that they gave me a backstory for. And I'm like, I love this item. And I could be like, all right, I'm gonna introduce it in this day that we're playing. And I give it to them and they're like, I don't want that item. And I'm like, this fits your character perfect. What are you talking about? But okay, fine. You find something else. But like little things like that. I loved creating those little items that like Alfred talked about, that armor set that like he found the pieces and it came together. I loved doing stuff like that where like you slowly became the hero, because a lot of this when you're playing most of these role-playing games, you start off slightly above a peasant. You're a little stronger, you're a little bit more resilient than a normal common person, but you grow to be this heroic epic person because of the things you gain, because of the experiences you have and what you defeat. You gain levels which make you stronger, you gain items which make you stronger, and like coming up with reasons to make someone so strong that they're going toe to toe with a dragon as opposed to a farmer with a pitchfork at level 2 running out there thinking they're gonna make a dent in the armor. Like that was my favorite part of RPGs in general. And I know
This
that
is
we've
funny.
talked about doing a one shot with some of our guests and stuff like that. And I think that's going to be the coolest thing is no matter which one of us runs it, I think we're going to have some tailored stuff that's going to be like specific to, oh man, this one episode we were talking with so and they mentioned this, and oh my gosh, so and so is going to have that Power Ranger belt that's just going to happen to fall into their hands, and here comes the +3 armor that just looks like a normal outfit, but all of a sudden
That
they're in a giant robot fighting a dragon. I mean, like crazy stuff like
ah,
that all the time.
it's funny you say that, Ryan, because that was my favorite part too. I hated taking a magic item from the Dungeon Master Guide or a pre-made one. I wanted to make one because they
Yeah.
were so cookie cutter, they were so bland. Or my least favorite thing, which I probably might be in a minority for Dungeon Masters, is I hated the curse stuff or the mitigating factors in a lot of magic items because I want my players to have fun. I don't want to
Yeah.
break the game, but I want them to have fun and enjoy the item I give them. So
Hmm.
I would make items all the time, and then the way the characters got the items, I would build like story arcs around that, because then they're like, oh wow, not only did I just get gifted this, there was a build up to it. It was epic. Uh,
Hmm.
and one of the items I created for somebody they didn't want, I ended up having them lose it, and it came into the hands of a big bad, and he used it against them. So I was like, fine, you don't want my cool magic item, I want my cool magic item, and it's gonna be used against you.
That's an awesome turnaround.
absolutely. I I think my last question for you guys overall is, what is your favorite part about D&D and why?
Do you want to go first, Alfred, or you want me to hit it?
I'll go first this time.
Okay.
Uh, for me as a DM, it's watching the players influence the story that I have in my head. Because, like we've talked about in the past, I don't plot a campaign. really. I will have, because it's the same way I write. I will have an idea of a campaign, and then I'll put the characters into situations, and whatever they want to do will determine how the plot kind of unfolds. So watching the characters and the players grow and experience the world I've created is my favorite part as a DM. As a player, it's just letting loose and doing whatever the heck I want in this fictional world. The creativity, the willingness of the DM to let me do silly and dumb things, those kinds of things.
So for me, it's the interactions with other players of like who we create and the silly events that happen between us that you never would have expected to happen. So like two very quick examples was, I think I talked about this off camera with you guys. Maybe I mentioned it in an episode, but we had a guy create a character who didn't really want to play in that campaign, but he was hanging out with us and we had played so many failed campaigns. So he made a monk with an oven inside of his chest, and he was like called McGriddle Master, and just like the silliness that we were like, yeah, you can do that, it doesn't matter. And then like he was like, okay, and then he got super into that character and like played off of the fact that he had a huge oven in his chest, and like it was awesome. But then also we
Sick.
had like an epic fight in a town, and like things were on fire, and this one guy was like no help whatsoever during the fight, and come to find out at the very end he had spent the entire fight shooting arrows into the shape of a skull and lighting it on fire to make like a Punisher skull. And like that was his purpose during that entire fight. But like to choose to do that, we still tell that story today because of it happening. And it was like, man, we almost wiped during this fight. What were you doing the whole time? And you go up and you look down and like, oh, there's a flaming skull on the ground. He's like, yeah, I was working on that the whole time. Like just stories like that you walk away from. But those are kind of my favorites. But to kind of throw that back at you, Nathan, since you haven't played, what do you think would be what you would look most forward to when and if you do get the chance to sit down and kind of play?
I mean, I already know. I just like creating crazy stuff, artifacts, characters, ideas for a story, and then like seeing if that would work for an incorporated game, and then just getting to experience it.
Mhm.
Because I love all the aspects of D&D. So I think that would be the most exciting part for me, is getting to really get creative of coming up with a character and working together with a couple people to create the world and ideas for arcs of the game, and then just letting them unfold. So I think for me that would be that's what I would look most forward to.
I
I think that's a
actually
great
Yeah.
answer.
two different players of mine in the same campaign too. They both wanted to be smiths. One of them was like a smith by trade when in the character creation, and the other one wasn't and wanted to start. So I had one apprentice to the other, and they would go around and be like, instead of looking for like money or anything, they'd be like, "Are there any weapons I can melt down? Are there any ingots and metal material I could take with me?" And I was like, "Sure, you're not becoming super rich. Let's see. Yeah, you find a whole bunch of this stuff." So they would go back to like their in this campaign they had a town that was like their home base, and they would go back there and they would just spend all their free time forging different weapons and whatnot. And the one guy was an artificer kind of style, so he was able to make the magic items off the bat. But seeing the other guy create his character and raise it up to the point where he was able to make magic items was pretty cool, because he was so excited, even though again, he wasn't able to do what the other guy could do at the start. To be able to do that as he progressed made him really happy. And he was able to use weapons that he made himself as opposed to bought or found. So that was cool to
So
see.
one more story to throw out there real quick. We had a campaign that obviously went and derailed. We didn't follow where the DM wanted us to go, but we ended up like we had a spell in third edition called like summon Formian Worker, which were like these ant creatures. And so we started summoning like whatever the cap was for that day, and there was no list that they would despawn. So we ended up like summoning enough to like build a city, and like that's all we did that campaign was like build up a city and then start like a trade organization. And then like we had leveled up enough to get, instead of Formian workers, you could get Formian soldiers, and then they were the guards to our town. It's like we had wasted so much time building a city as opposed to going through what the DM like actually had put all this hard work into his story of us going down this path. And he's It's just like, what? Why? Why? Go play Sim City if you want to build a city. Why are you? So,
Oh, that's fun.
That's awesome.
but
Well, for all of our listeners who listen to this, we'll have more D&D to come and all that sort of stuff. And for you guys, if you're D&D players or of the LitRPG realm or MMORPG, whatever, leave in the comments and stuff what your favorite things are about D&D and playing and the books and anything else. I would love to hear. But besides that, I think that's about a wrap, guys.
I think you're right.
All right. Well, as always, we've been the Bearded Nerdy hosts, and until the next time we return. Funky fantasy. The bowl. Stratoceros. It's the War of Nerds.